This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
Hello everyone. Can I still, I'm sure we're going to have more people coming, so if you're right at the end of a row, if you could move closer in, though I do know that some people have to leave early, so if you do have to leave early, you're allowed to sit at the end, but otherwise, if you could move to the centre, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Well, good afternoon everybody. I'll stand up for this bit. For those of you that haven't met me, my name's at the bottom of that left-hand side there. My name's Michelle Livett and I'm the Director of the Bachelor of Science. So for some of you, I might be that vague person that you remember being there at day one when you started your degree, introducing you to the BSc. So that's where I might have seen you or you might have seen me in the past. And it's fantastic to have students that are really thinking about using their BSc as a platform for what you're going to do in the future, and to come and listen to 5 people that have already done it. And we know that listening to people that are just a little bit further down the track than you are is a really valuable part of your experience. But I'm going to talk a little bit about introduce some of the ideas that we're going to be talking about and what the people at the front are going to be talking about. And it is going to be them talking, not me. The list, as you can see appearing on the screen at the moment, is a list that comes from a survey of employers that's conducted by the Graduate Careers Australia group pretty much every year. And it's also pretty much an unchanging list. And it's a list of the attributes that employers are looking for in the people that they employ. And what I'm wanting you to see is the calibre of academic results is number 4. There are 3 things that come before that. And communication is absolutely at the top, and passion, knowledge of the industry, critical reasoning, a whole lot of things around what you do in science rather than the specifics of knowing exactly and being able to name all the bones in your leg or being able to solve Schrodinger's equation for the hydrogen atom. So a lot of the attributes that graduates are looking for are not those specifics, but the things that those other learning outcomes might be examples of. So we're going to be listening to people talk to us about that. So here's who we have, and I'm going to get them to wave when I introduce them. So first of all, they're all Bachelor of Science graduates, and they're doing something different at the moment. So George, have you waved? Excellent, thank you. Has also done a Masters of Business Administration, and you can see he graduated with a Physiology major back in 2014. But it's not terrifically obviously connected to the fact that he's a financial planner now, and that's what he's going to be ending up talking to you about. Next is Claudia. They're not in order of seating, you can tell. And Claudia completed her degree just last year in psychology, and she's also studying at the moment, but balancing study and work, I'm gathering, and so is working in HR. And Phil, who's a civil systems major, and he's gone on to do the Master of Engineering in that. And so he'll be reflecting on that, but also the experiences that he made sure that he had on his way through his Bachelor of Science. Sarah, thank you. So Sarah did an Animal Health and Disease major, and as you can see, graduated in 2015. But she's the entrepreneur amongst the group, and it's in fact her own business that she's being entrepreneurial in, and so that's going to be a really important part of what she speaks about. And Jenny Martin, also a BSc graduate, and you can see PhD zoology a while ago. I don't know when Jenny graduated quite, but Jenny has 2... Sorry, I just don't know the year, that's all. Doesn't matter. She doesn't either.
99.
Okay.
That's how old I am.
Yeah. So, but Jenny's wearing 2 hats. She's an alumnus. She's graduated with a BSc, but she's also somebody that teaches the science communication subjects within both the science undergraduate and graduate. So I'm going to leave that list up there just so that you can remind yourself of what who it is that's speaking at each stage and what their background is. But I've asked them to start off by talking about what their role is and why that's a place for a BSc graduate to end up, and what it is from their BSc, what learnings they had when they were going through the BSc that helps them do the job that they're now in. And I thought I'd start with George, and then we can just go all the way along. That makes it easy for me to give George the microphone and just pass it to the person on his left as he goes. Thanks, George.
Okay, thanks very much. So my role now in financial planning, and it has changed a little bit, but we'll keep it financial planning for simplicity. It doesn't really link into a science degree, which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, but you'd be surprised how many people work in finance who did things that are completely different. And I think the main advantage science students have, it was number 3 on that list. It was critical reasoning, really good analytical skills, which compared to people who've only studied something like commerce or business, they seem to lack that. And a little story I'll share with you. A couple of years ago, someone said to me, "Oh, you must hate the fact that you wasted 3 years of your life and all that money doing a science degree, and now you work in financial planning." But it was the complete opposite, because I can think in a way that's really different to those around me. And it gives that advantage because you guys, you study exact sciences, things which have exact answers. 1 + 1 always equals 2. In finance and commerce, 1 + 1 equals whatever the hell you want it to equal. By the time you take into account rebates, tax rates, deductions, moving money into different asset classes, whatever you want, you can make 1 + 1 equal what you want. So people who've only studied that field, and it's very important to study, but they don't think in the same way that you guys do. So that's why I think science is actually a great foundation point for whatever you get into. So I'll pass it on to Phil.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so my name is Phil, and I'm here to talk a lot about the voluntary experiences that I've undertaken during my Bachelor of Science and what some of you may consider doing to demonstrate your other skills to future employers. As Michelle had put up at the start, top 2 was communication and passion and drive. And for me, some of the voluntary experiences I've done, whether it's been on, I was on Catalyst. I've been a Bachelor of Science ambassador for the University of Melbourne, plus I've done other things around that just demonstrate a care about the community and social justice, and I would really encourage those of you sitting out there wondering, what can I do while I'm attending Melbourne University? What can this experience, where can it take me? To give it some further thought, which I'll elaborate on as we continue our discussion.
Hi, my name's Sarah Last. I got into the Bachelor of Science because I thought I wanted to be a vet student. So I spent all of my year 12 and then most of my time in the Bachelor of Science trying to get good grades so I could get into vet school here at Melbourne Uni. I was very excited when I got my acceptance letter into the vet school, and I did a year of vet and then realised I didn't want to be a vet. Which, when that's been your goal for 5 years, it was a very hard realisation to come to. So I thought I wanted to get into, I was, throughout my Bachelor of Science, I always studied subjects that I enjoyed. That was kind of my criteria, apart from biochem, hated that one. But I had to do it. With that exclusion, I always studied subjects I liked, which meant that I had gotten good grades, and it had kind of led me down this path of animal health science and agriculture, and a lot of my subjects fit into that area. And I really connected well with a lot of my lecturers. I asked a lot of questions, so I kind of got known as that student, and I was able to kind of develop some relationships there. And when I kind of realised that vet school wasn't for me, I kind of sat there thinking, well, what's next? I'd always had kind of crazy ideas, I guess, that I'd spent some time working on in my kind of side, and they were usually all animal health science and agricultural related, because that's my background and that's where my experience is growing up. But they'd never really gotten off the ground. They'd never really gone anywhere for one reason or the other, and I was kind of interested to see whether or not I could dedicate some time to kind of better understand this space of what it takes to get an idea off the ground. So I was lucky enough to get a scholarship for the Masters of Entrepreneurship program at the Wade Institute here at the University of Melbourne. And that was really to say, well, if vet school's not for me, and at that time the vet school actually gave me a year off, so it kind of gave me a bit of a, you know, if I didn't like it, I got to come back option, which, you know, I think that's really kind of where the Melbourne model triumphs, because it gives you that flexibility. So I did the Masters program and I did really well there, and one of the projects that I was working on in the back of my mind was an idea in the poultry industry. So that's kind of where your meat chicken comes from. And it's to say, you know, when you're raising any animals in an agricultural setting, if you get the first week of life right in terms of optimising their environment, it sets them up well for the rest of the growing out period, and it means you get the best welfare outcomes, and it means you get the best financial return. So looking at the chicken industry, one of the big problems that they face is trying to get baby chickens to eat and drink during the first 3 days, because baby chickens are adorable, but they're not hugely clever. So they kind of indiscriminately peck at anything, and sometimes they'll get food and sometimes it'll be sawdust, and that's not a great start for baby chickens, because normally what happens in nature is the mother hen says, well, feather brains, this is food and this is water. And they do that using a series of kind of you know, visual and auditory stimuli. Anyway, so based on that, I started building kind of a robotic system to replicate those key features of maternal care and teach baby chickens how to eat and drink. And that was a project I was working on late 2016, and then I kind of teamed up with another master's student who did a Bachelor of Commerce, and since then we're kind of well on the way of product development. We've partnered with Ingham's and Hazeldene's. We've raised $250,000 from seed investors here in Melbourne, and we had that matched by an accelerating commercialisation grant. So that's a bit of a circuitous story about, you know, how I came to sit in this chair today, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot you can do with your science degree if you keep following what you're interested in and have those tough questions with yourself about whether or not the goal you've held for all this time is really matching what you're currently doing. So, yeah.
And before you hand it over, Sarah,
yes.
Reflecting on your Bachelor of Science, what things did you learn in your BC apart from the animal health and disease that you're now using in your building of your business?
Probably definitely the analytical thinking. I'm surrounded by lots of business people all day, and they've got a great way of kind of keeping us focused on where we're going, but sometimes the steps taken, you kind of need to be a little bit scientific. In the entrepreneurial space, we often talk about kind of lean startup and having multiple iterations, which is just a really fancy way of saying lots of little experiments. So having that rigour of thinking and in terms of the activities that you're doing has been really valuable.
Thank you, Sarah. Claudia, thank you.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I completed my Bachelor of Science quite recently at the end of last year, so 2017. But at the moment, I'm currently working in human resources and recruitment, and also studying my Master of Management in HR at the Melbourne Business School, so I was across the road this morning. So I guess why we're all here today is sort of to, give you guys an insight into why your Bachelor of Science is a very, very valuable degree, not only if you go on to complete a science-related or STEM-related field job, but you can almost go into every other industry that maybe isn't a straight accountant or a straight doctor or dentist or something that's really, or a nurse. Anything from human resources to finance to economics, even auditing these days. Different industries are looking to seek different graduates from different, backgrounds. And by bringing different ideas together, that's, the biggest companies in the world want graduates from different fields, because different ideas then breed more innovation, and you've got people thinking differently, which is always good to have. Funnily enough, working in recruitment, science grads, what I like about science grads is they always think why. If you've got someone that thinks why, there's always room to improve processes and things like that as well. So even though we are quite process-driven people and we've got that analytical thinking, it's the real why, the why question, which science grads always have, and that's really important in the workplace, because I don't think people should be afraid to, question why can't we improve a process, why can't something be done differently, in order to improve, your own work and also the business's growth as well. So, yeah, coming from a science background, having that opportunity, to do group assignments, you probably shake your head when you think, oh, a group assignment's the last thing I want to do, but it's actually probably one of the most valuable things that you'll get throughout your university degree. Working with other people, you will work with other people in the workplace that don't see eye to eye. So again, communication, that's why that's up there on that list. If you can learn to communicate well with your group members, that's always going to cross over into the workplace. the same thing with interpersonal skills, having that drive and passion for what you're doing. So if you don't like what you're doing at the moment or don't know what you're doing, try and seek out opinions from other people, try and seek out other experiences. So I think by all you guys being here today, that's a step in the right direction, by coming to listen to other people who've had those same experiences. So I'm looking forward to speaking more about that today.
That's great. Thanks, Claudia. And I think Claudia's I'm assuming, Claudia, that you developed the capacity to ask why and develop those communication skills, etc., as you went through your degree. Absolutely. Jenny, thank you.
So I guess on paper it's absolutely essential that I have a BSc, because I can't be an academic at this university in the Faculty of Science without having a BSc and then having gone on to do a PhD. But in actual fact, I veered off the standard path a number of years ago with Michelle's help. So I'm no longer kind of a standard research academic. I don't really do any zoology anymore, although that's the area that my PhD is in, because through working with Michelle, I worked out quite early in my academic career here that in fact communication was going to be the #1 thing that our science graduates needed, and that at that time wasn't being taught explicitly at all. So the things I learned in my BSc, and I should point out that I also did a Bachelor of Arts, which for me personally was important. I don't suggesting you all need to go and do a Bachelor of Arts, but for me personally, I did a lot more writing in my arts degree than I did in my science degree. And really now my whole focus is on helping you guys to learn how to write more effectively, learn how to speak more effectively, kind of learn how to not sound like scientists, so that other people can understand you and understand, you know, it's really important that the world as a whole can understand more about science and how it operates and how we gather evidence, what's good evidence. So I think a lot of what I learned as a scientist was, how to evaluate the scientific practice and what we consider to be good science and bad science. And fortunately for me, I feel like I learnt that well enough in my science degree that I can now apply that to areas of science. I can apply critical thinking to areas of science that I don't actually have a background in, because as a science communicator now, I'm frequently writing and speaking. I'm on the radio twice a week. I spend a lot of my time talking about areas of science that I don't actually have training in, but I feel like my scientific training is sufficient that I can work out whether the science that's being reported is, is good science or not. So never downplay the fact that understanding how science as a process works is important. It's really important. Being able to think critically, being able to analyse data, being able to read a graph, being able to explain complex ideas to people, all of those things are really important, and any writing and speaking practice you can get along the way is incredibly important too. And no doubt Michelle will at least briefly let me get on my high horse later about that. I'm hoping.
Back down to George. We'll do it that way. So the next next area that I'd like people to explore is they talked a bit about the skills that scientists bring to the role that they are now in. And I want them to reflect on their own experience about where that happened, where did they develop those skills, and particularly if it was something that was outside the classroom, because many of you are involved in things that are in addition to the subjects that you're doing. The people up the front did as well. But before I let George loose on that question, I did want to make the point that you will have heard now that all of these people have done some study beyond their Bachelor of Science and outside their Bachelor of Science. This happens to be the panel that we have today, but we could equally have had a panel of 5 people who hadn't done any extra study that were also in fantastic jobs straight out of their Bachelor of Science. We could have had someone who graduated a few years ago who's now working as a consultant with Accenture, and he gained his additional experience not through extra study but by being a graduate appointee in positions and developed his skills that way. So I don't want you to think that just because these people have all done study beyond their BSc that that's a prerequisite for a fantastic career. Those skills can be developed in many different ways, and that's why we're going to ask George now if he thinks about where he developed the attributes that he now brings to his position. Was it in the science degree? Was it outside extracurricular activities? What sorts of things contributed, George?
Yeah, no, it is a very good question. I think I can think of the exact moment, and the reason I did physiology as my major was in I think it was second year physiology subject, and we started doing dissections, and I remember the dissection of the heart. Now it probably sounds a bit creepy, but I just found that so unbelievable to be holding something and looking at something, which ultimately just keeps the whole body going. And for me, that kind of incited that passion, which again was coincidentally number 2 on that list. And in the job I'm in now, I have done some of the interviews for new colleagues who have come in, and we look for those exact things. Are you passionate just about something? We did actually take on a guy as an intern, and every Monday morning I go, oh, hey, how's your weekend? And he goes, oh, didn't really do anything. I know, very boring, very boring. And I keep trying to encourage him to just evoke some passion in some field, because otherwise, unfortunately, he probably won't be there in the long term. So I can think that physiology moment was the one where I went, wow, this is fantastic. It just gave me sort of a holistic view of looking at people, really, seeing we're all the same. And yeah, I think that was the moment within the science degree. Outside of science, to be honest, I wish I did more things the university had to offer, so sort of more, whether it's volunteering roles, clubs, that sort of thing. I lived about an hour from the university, so I think I just got sick of the commuting. But for all you guys who have the chance to do it or want to do it, I think getting involved in the university culture will encourage that passion and that excitement with all different aspects the Bachelor of Science has to offer.
And what about other things that you're doing now, George? So, because you're not just a financial planner, are you?
Yeah, not just a financial planner. So I was a financial planner up until February, but then I decided to jump in and do my own thing. So I've started 2 businesses. One's called The Clueless Economist, and that plays on the point of what I was mentioning before, how in economy no one knows what's going on. And so I do some consulting work, but I also do some writing, which I really enjoy. And then the other business is called Presentation Style Melbourne. So that's teaching people just like yourself the importance of standing in front of others and sharing your message, because it doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room. If you can't get people to understand your message, you may as well not be speaking to begin with. So that's another really big thing we look for when we're interviewing people, is just how well do they interact with their colleagues? Are they going to bring good value to the workplace? Can they interact with clients? In the field I was working in, no one's going to invest money if they don't trust you, they don't want to get along with you. So that's where that came from, because I felt like it's an area that is promoted highly, but it's not necessarily very well taught. And often the responsibility is put on the shoulders of the students to figure that out. So hence why I started the presentation business.
Thanks, George.
I'll pass it on to Phil.
Yes, and Phil, now's the time to talk
Thanks,
about all
George.
the things that you've been doing for your leaders in the
Yeah, absolutely. I completely see how this relates, Michelle, and I want to follow on from what George said about making the most of your university opportunity. For me, I had initially dropped out of high school in Year 10, so coming back to study at university was something, 17 years later, was something that was a big step for me, and having had some experience of life without a degree and the sort of career opportunities available to you, I really wanted to make the most of this experience here while I'm doing my 5 years studying my Master of Engineering here. And I'm very conscious, and I've mentioned this a few times to other people, I'm very conscious about how lucky we are when there's 6.5 billion people around the world. We are living here in a first world developed nation, and we have this opportunity to attend a facility like Melbourne University, where most of the people you meet or interact with are highly intelligent, driven, hard-working people in their own right, and you can have some really interesting conversations. I was really conscious of how can I make the most of this experience this next 5 years and make the most of it. That's what led me into participating as an Ambassador of Science for the Melbourne University. Sarah had mentioned asking questions of academics. I've done that as well, just make the most of this opportunity to learn. I love ideas, asking academics about ideas. I find it mind-blowing. It's really exciting. And from that led into one of my lecturers asking me, could I help her research creating a seaweed construction material? Okay, I'll jump on board with that, and ended up participating in a Catalyst episode. So that is how I would define making the most of your university opportunity. And the skills you can learn by doing that, I think, are so much broader than some of the hard skills you will learn and the others have spoken about. You can really develop yourself as an individual. As a science ambassador, I've taken leadership skills, public speaking skills, workshops, mental health first aid opportunities, just these chances to develop yourself. And I think just as a share some of the experiences I've had. When you look at the number one task, communication skills, yep, we can communicate as we write or when we're talking to people, but there's so many more nuanced levels to communication, how we relate to others, that are important too. from the documentary or working with academic staff. Tim Flannery, I don't know if many of you remember him. He got Australian of the Year in 2007 for his work in climate change. I got the chance to sit with him for an hour and talk with him 4 days after Donald Trump had pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Change Accords, which was just a fascinating conversation then to talk to one of Australia's leading science communicators on that very issue. On the flip side, another example, one of my voluntary activities is I feed the homeless people down at council estate. So you're switching very different circumstances from talking with academics on an intellectual scientific level to talking about people who are drug affected or mentally unwell or are suffering a crisis point in their lives where you're looking for a much deeper, richer communicating on an emotional level that I think builds you as an individual. And some of my voluntary experiences I've had have overlapped with my studies, which leads to a bit of a question in my mind: what should I tackle? Should I worry about my academic score for a particular unit, or am I missing out on another opportunity to develop myself in a particular way? So I had the opportunity to volunteer giving a group of high school students tours around the university campus for a week on the science experience. Some of you may have done the science experience as you came up into Melbourne. So to take on that role, I needed to lose 2% of a subject score for the attendance for the workshop, but I looked at all the personal growth within myself that I would learn and gain from this, the sort of teamwork, the leadership skills which you can develop and explain to an employer when you're answering and addressing key selection criteria in your resume. These opportunities to show these skills felt to me a little bit more important at that time than just answering the academic skills. So there are so many advantages you can take from not pulling away from the textbook, pulling away from your lecture notes and just saying, hang on, what else is going on here around university, whether it be Engineers Without Borders or any of the other social groups. You can jump into, become involved and just broaden yourself as an individual, especially for all those soft skills that we are talking about here today.
So Sarah, how did you develop some of those?
So I think there's probably like 3 examples that I wanted to give. And I think the first one's a bit of a hard truth. So certainly in the world of entrepreneurship or starting your own business, but I think this goes for almost any career that anyone along here has, that, you know, sometimes the working world is just hard work. There's long hours. You know, sometimes it's quite taxing, you know, kind of mentally, and you get to the end of a Friday and all you want to do is just watch Netflix. But I think that there's a lot of parallels between that and exam periods. And, you know, I think what the Bachelor of Science gives you is, you know, you put in tools and you put in processes for your own kind of study habits and your own self-management, which I think is really very transferable when work can get pretty stressful or when it can get feels like it's a bit too much, and that's hugely transferable. So those kind of you know, just making sure that you're really on top of work and that you're on top of your studies, those like really transferable skills, and I think that's kind of across any university discipline. But I think that's, you know, it definitely should be stated that, you know, when you're, you know, properly managing your studies and you're kind of striving to get the best marks you can, you know, you're practicing those same skills that are going to be, you know, used in your everyday working environment, which is, you know, really helpful when you want to get something done at work and you're really excited for it, but you're just tired. The second was, I've forgotten. Oh, yeah. Working in teams with people who aren't scientists. So I did a case competition with one of the colleges, and that was a team from, you know, lots of different faculties. We had, you know, people from arts, we had people from commerce, and it was kind of my first experience kind of working in a team environment with people who are not from my own faculty. And I found that a really fascinating experience because it was great to be able to work with people who saw the world so differently, and you really did start to realise that, you know, being a science graduate does kind of give you these analytical tools, and that they're really valuable in a team, but they've got to be actively managed when you start thinking about diversity in work groups. So I think that was a really great experience because, you know, now I'm the only science graduate in animal health science, at least, that I kind of work with now. I work with a lot of engineers and I work with a lot of commerce and art students, but not necessarily anyone who has an animal health background. So, you know, you can kind of recognise that I'm bringing a really important voice and perspective to the team, but at the same time, you know, sometimes me and another person can talk past each other because we've got different backgrounds and different assumptions. So having that experience and that consciousness of difference is kind of really important to making sure those relationships run smoothly, because if they, you know, the other option is you end up getting frustrated because, you know, you can't quite communicate effectively with somebody if they're not coming from the same background. And the third was, I should have written these down. Oh, gosh.
We can come back to you if you like.
Yeah, I might have to.
Yeah, so,
But yeah.
thanks, Sarah. So, Claudia, and then, you remember now.
Sorry, horses I'm handed over. So the last one is the ability to learn new skills. So my current role is really engineering heavy. We do a lot of mechatronics work, and I have zero background in mechatronics engineering. And in fact, the first time we built our system, it's a robotic system, and we had no money to pay anyone else to do it, so I built it. Which was a really fun experience, a very frustrating experience of me versus Google. But, you know, if there's a job to be done, there's a really exciting opportunity if we get the job done. So, you know, necessity is the mother of all invention. So, you know, for a decently long amount of time, I'm a mechatronics engineer. And I think the skills in my Bachelor of Science, you know, you go out into the world, you're not going to have all the skills. You know, it's inevitable and very predictable that, you know, no matter what job anyone here in the room gets, you know, the skills that you end up using will not be, you know, will not fully be covered by what you've learned in class. And I think that's kind of the nature of the world these days as information, you know, the information available in the world exponentially increases rather. You're not going to be able to have the capacity in a 3-year bachelor course to learn it, and it's much more about developing the skills to be able to learn new skills than anything else. And so I think having a good foundation in the basics, you know, in how the world works, but much more importantly, how to get new information when you don't have it to hand. So those are my 3 points.
Thank you.
And funnily enough, I actually have 3 points as well, so hopefully I remember mine. So I guess the 3 main places, I guess, where I developed the skills that help me work in the workplace today are from actually taking breadth here at the University of Melbourne. Second is volunteering experiences, and third is the actual experience of the Bachelor of Science degree itself. So I'll start off with talking about breadth. In the past, I know there's been a lot of students who don't take breadth seriously. I think that it is pivotal to take breadth seriously. So if, say, you know, you're thinking in the future, are you going to have a job that may involve project management? Go out and take a project management breadth. If you're struggling with your writing skills, try and take something in the arts faculty. I think breadth's really, really important to have, and it shows prospective employers that you've got, again, a breadth of experience. It's a bit of irony in the word there, but yeah, I guess it will provide you with different experiences, and again, like everyone else has touched on, working with different people, and by having, I guess, an insight into other areas that are outside the Bachelor of Science is also very important, because you will come across different areas in the workplace. You will come across different people that have had different backgrounds to you. So then leading on into, I guess, I'll give you some background about the job that I currently complete at the moment. So I'm in HR and recruitment. So from day to day, I can go through onboarding new employees, so taking orientation days, through to writing contracts, completing exit interviews, having difficult conversations with staff, screening employees, screening resumes. So I feel that through taking different type of breadth subjects, I did acquire different skills from each type of breadth. But I will say that in my 3rd year, I did take glee singing and a language. So yeah, but I think take breadth seriously, try and take breadth subjects that will complement your science degree. So go through the handbook, have a really good sift through, and see also what interests you as well. My second point of where I've developed, I guess, most of my skills, which have helped me in the workplace today, are through volunteering. So at the end of my 1st year of my science degree, I was in a bit of limbo. I thought that I was going to be a chemistry graduate and work for one of the big pharmaceutical companies, but here I am working in HR. So I think that through volunteering, I really found that I could go out and sort of, again, develop new skills that were able to, I guess, allow me to build on and self-develop, as well as actually I ended up finding out that I wanted to work in HR through volunteering. And through volunteering, I was able to then acquire jobs, paid jobs in HR from there. So I think volunteering, whether it be charitable work, whether it be event volunteering, there are a few good websites. For example, I Need Helpers, which they advertise a lot of event volunteering on there. So, you know, again, take things that interest you, but also each volunteer experience will allow you to build on those skills, which, again, it looks great to employers when you've got volunteer experience on there. And as was said before, sometimes a volunteer experience is as good as, you know, doing well on a mid-sem test or completing a subject with a H1 if you get a H2A, but you've got 3 different types of volunteering experience. I think that's going to really stand out to an employer. And my third point was actually developing skills within my Bachelor of Science. So again, as I touched on before, you know, trying to work and communicate well with people through group assignments, meeting deadlines. There's work. Unfortunately, there's deadlines and work too, as well as, you know, university. So I guess the experience that you learn from prioritising tasks, being able to sit there and really want to study and want to do well is always really important in the workplace as well. As I said before, process-driven, there's a lot of processes that go on in the workplace. So, you know, following steps 1 to 5 in order to, I don't know, integrate, differentiate, or, you know, something for calculus. You know, you've got to follow steps to complete mathematical problems, so it's very similar again in the workplace. So don't think that, you know, because, you know, I'm sitting here studying for 5 hours for an exam, it's not all worth it. In the end, you'll think back and go, okay, all that hard work and all that time doing my notes and meeting up with people to do group assignments, it is all really worth it in the end. So I wish you guys luck.
Thanks, Claudia. And I think Jenny might be able to reflect on some of the things she offers as well as some of the things that she does.
Am I allowed to? So I agree with so much of what's already been said, particularly about how incredibly fortunate we are to be at an institution like this, and how you've got to get enough sleep, but you've got to also be willing to push yourself outside your comfort zone and volunteer for things and try things. I completely agree, and I think the skills that you develop in balancing your personal life, your work life. I assume many of you have jobs. You probably need to pay your rent, you need to buy your food. Combining that with also studying really hard. I mean, exactly, they're the skills that get me through my life now when I'm under pressure. So I agree with all of that. Again, 3 things that I think of that helped me personally in my career. One is, actually no, I've got 4, sorry. One is I did a lot of volunteer writing when I was at uni. So I wrote for Farrago magazine, I wrote for other various publications. I had to deal with my work being critiqued. I had to incorporate feedback. You know, one of the problems with university assignments is we do it, we hand it in, we get a mark for it, we never think about it again. That's not actually how the world works. Anything you ever write in future, you will get feedback on it from your colleagues, from your peers. You will incorporate that feedback and improve it on the basis of that feedback. So any situation in which you can write, which isn't just for a university assignment that you do and get out of your life as quickly as possible, I think is really good. So writing for me was important. Secondly, I took on a leadership role in a sports club here at university for many years, which taught me how to run meetings, how to chair sessions, how to take minutes, how to write newsletters, how to manage occupational health and safety, how to do all sorts of things that I probably wouldn't have learnt those skills otherwise. So any leadership role you can take on within your world of hobbies and other things, I highly recommend. And when you're writing your CV to apply for a job, people aren't just interested in the skills you've developed in an academic context. Whatever you've developed as a volunteer or, you know, in amongst your world of hobbies is if not as valid, you know, more valid in some situations. So anything you can do like that. I also did a lot of theatre and music when I was a uni student, and learning how to perform in lots of theatre shows and lots of musical performances helped me massively as a science communicator, because now, and I guess also as a teacher, hopefully anyone in the room who's ever been in one of my lectures would concur I at least attempt to make them interesting. Your judgment... No, well, I can do that too if you like. But, you know, for me, and particularly teaching a room of 500 first-year biology students at 8 o'clock on a Friday morning, I very much feel like I need to perform to keep people awake. So for me, a whole lot of performance skills were really important as well. But the last thing I did was an internship, and I highly recommend that. So I had the opportunity, so I did 5 years of undergrad because I did arts and science. It's not offered anymore, but breadth would have worked just fine for me if that's when I'd come through, because I wanted to keep up a language, essentially. But in between my 4th and 5th year, I had the opportunity to do an internship at Accenture, which back then was Anderson Consulting. And I was actually really scared. I applied for it because I was asked to by some of my lecturers. I was very shocked when I got the position because it came with quite a lot of money and a bit of prestige. And I'm like, why on earth is a business group employing a zoologist? You know, like my day-to-day life was following kangaroos around in the bush, wearing hard yakka. I'm going to have to go and buy a suit. And I was actually, I even remember being in tears one day because I just thought, I don't have the quantitative skills, I don't have the computer skills, the job you're describing to me, I don't think I can do. I think you've picked the wrong person. But what that internship taught me was that actually 99% of it, well, no, hang on, let me break this up. 49.5% of it was about communication skills, and the other 49.5% of it was about being a nice person who could get along with other people. Because I made friends with everybody in the team and they all wanted to help me. They all taught me everything I needed to know, and it turned out that actually all I needed to do was be able to analyse data and write up clear summaries of that information. That was really all the job involved, and I could do those things. So yeah, take any opportunity you can to develop any of those skills. And very quickly, what Michelle's alluding to is, if you possibly can, come and study with me now, because I offer subjects, and if you've missed out the chance to do it with me, then go and do it with George. But what I now teach is how to write and how to speak. I've got an undergraduate subject, it's a breadth subject at 2nd year called Science, Communication and Employability, get the name right. Science, Communication and Employability. I'll teach you how to public speak, I'll teach you how to write, and I'll teach you how to get a job. If you're going to stick around for a bit longer, there's several subjects at master's level to develop those skills further. So take the chance to develop your communication skills while you're still here.
Thanks, Jenny. Now, our panel members have been extremely articulate, so we've got 2 questions I wanted to ask them that I'm going to delay because I'd like to give you a chance to ask questions. So just know that I've got 1 or 2 more up my sleeve if we don't get questions from you that don't actually flush out all of the things that we're wanting to talk about. So hopefully, and I should have warned you earlier that we're going to give you this opportunity. So does anyone have any questions? And it can be directed to the whole panel, or it could be directed to an individual, and you'll need to speak up really quite loudly just to make sure that everybody in the room can hear. So, one here.
All right, I think I have a bit of a question. Maybe it's a bit more to Phil, and especially about engineering, for instance. That the masters here, they have a requirement that you need a WAM of 65, though. It's just that I'm worried that how am I supposed to? Okay. Okay, fine.
So can I just interrupt? I don't think that's a question that Phil's probably the best equipped to answer. Is that about the entry requirements for the Master of Engineering?
It's just okay. My question is about, even as an engineer, Phil does say that he does a lot of volunteering,
Yes.
Okay, even in the job, you can't just, go in and say, I'm too busy to do any volunteering. Would the employer's perspective be, have a really bad, bad image about you?
If you haven't volunteered when
Yeah.
you apply. I think it's beneficial. I do know there are a number of employers out there who seek those who do show some community spirit and care about the community, and one of the ways we can do that is volunteering. And I would say if that is something that worries you, that lack in the background, you're still studying your degree, there's still plenty of chance to jump in and volunteer. And it doesn't have to be when you're studying as well. You can put in 1 hour, a couple of hours a week, a couple of hours a fortnight, and do something that's really beneficial, that can make a difference in someone's life or help out some people. So I would say it's never too late to start, and also there are a whole range of things that employers are looking for, and Claudia could probably comment on that being from HR. That isn't necessarily just about volunteering, although that's a large focus of what we're talking about now.
So to probably answer your question, I guess recruiters look for the best possible candidate that they can have. So we get a wide range of applications. We've got people with different types of experiences. Usually you look for university qualification, look for relevant job experience, and say volunteering experience or other interests. So it's sort of just by volunteering or by putting down your interest on a CV, it gives the employer, I guess, your CV is sort of there to show or give you a broad picture to the employer of what you're about. But I don't think if, I know as a student I was quite busy and trying to fit everything is quite difficult. But if you can sort of say from volunteering you can pick up certain skills, but if you can pick up those skills and show the employer that you've got the same skills that you acquire through volunteering, through say a subject that you completed at uni. So if you are in an interview and they ask you, what was a time where you displayed, great initiative skills, and say one person might pull that from a volunteer experience, but someone else could say, I was trying to manage a group of people during a group assignment, and during this was my experience. So as long as you can pull those sort of skills that the employer is looking for from some form of experience, whether it be life experience, whether it be personal experience or university experience, employers sort of don't go, okay, they haven't got volunteer experience, we're not going to look at their CV. So it's sort of anything to value add is always good to have. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes.
So this is a question for Jenny.
Could it be loud enough so that the back will have a go anyway?
So this is just a question for Jenny. You mentioned that you did a internship at a consulting firm. How do you search for those kinds of things? Because I don't see many opportunities coming my way.
At that time, it was a scholarship that was, that was advertised that some of my lecturers sent on to me. But in terms of finding internships now, we have a fantastic industry and careers group here in the Faculty of Science. Yep. And part of their job is to help you find internships, and you can take an internship subject as part of your degree. So there's immense support within the faculty to help you to not only find an internship but actually choose one that's going to help you develop the skills that you want to develop. So anyone who's interested in an internship, if you go onto the Faculty of Science website, there's a lot of information there, and yeah, you can get credit for a subject for doing it, which wasn't the case when I went through.
And you could choose to go to the information sessions about that internship subject, because the internship subject runs with students finding their own placement. And so that means, as a faculty, we need to support people to be able to do that. So there's information even before students enrol about how to go about finding internships. So even if you don't end up enrolling in the subject for that internship, it will still give you some advice about how to do that. The other resource is to keep reading BSci News, which is probably how you found out about this session anyway. So we're probably speaking to the converted students here. Keep looking into BSci News, because often people offering internship subjects will ask us to promote it to students through that avenue. Now, just, yes, and Sarah would like to follow up.
So this mainly applies to potential engineers or data scientists, or computer scientists. I don't know if it's applicable to everyone else, but the Melbourne Accelerator program, in conjunction with the School of Engineering, run a program called Tinelli Beta, which is where they pair masters and undergraduate students with startups that are going through the Melbourne Accelerator program, so other small companies, and they run internships. Sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. Oh, actually, no, they all have to be paid, actually. So, yep, jump on Tinelli Beta and have a look.
Yeah, put some in chat as well. Now, I'm just going to see if there are other questions first. So, in the middle, yes? Yes?
My name is Julia. Thanks, everybody, for your talks. I'm similar to Phil. I'm almost 33. I took a 15-year gap. But I'm doing actually the graduate diploma of statistics, but it's your undergraduate units. I don't know if people know. One of the things that I'm really trying to do is I just don't know anybody who works in my field, including my family, anything like that. And so I kind of just take up opportunities, but I feel like I'm doing it a little bit blind, a little bit. And so I have heard from people like that mentors and things like that are really beneficial. So I was wondering if you guys had any experience with that, and specifically how you know, I try to keep an open mind for it, but like, actually, I have a lot of mentors, don't get me wrong, but not like people specifically in my field that I want to get into. So yeah, I was just curious if you had any experience with that.
So I'll open it up to the panel in a moment, but even before that, I've just gone to the last slide that I was planning to show, which is an invitation for people to sign up for the Faculty of Science Industry Mentoring Program, and that is intended to be designed to enable you to find somebody that is going to be in your field and provide that. So for people in your situation, this is one avenue, and I really recommend that you take that up, but now I'll open it up to the panel to talk about more generally.
One of the things that I'd recommend, or there's actually two things, and this has come from my learnings with the Careers and Industry group, is to find whatever your association is, the professional association for whatever your area of study is. See if you can join as a student member. It's usually quite cheap. There'll be conferences, there'll be get-togethers, there'll be social events, there'll be any number of things that you can go to. Often you can volunteer if they're running a conference. If you have any social media skills, and I highly recommend, this is the age where you should all have social media skills. You should be blogging, you should be on Twitter, you should be using LinkedIn, all of those things. And you can volunteer your skills to help that professional organisation, and you can make yourself very valuable to them. Also, just by using LinkedIn, there's a lot of tools, and again, the faculty run sessions teaching you how to use them, but the alumni tool is very useful. So you can basically go in and do a whole lot of searches and find people who have come through this university who are now working in the field that you're interested in, and a lot of people are very happy for you to reach out to them and say, hey, I see you're a graduate from Melbourne Uni, I'm a student there now, any chance I could buy you a coffee and have a chat for 20 minutes? Because the bigger the network you cultivate now, the more success you're going to have in finding jobs. Because you all know most jobs never get advertised. Most jobs go through word of mouth. So I highly recommend reaching out to people who you have a point of connection with, which is that you studied at this institution, and connecting with them and trying to, you know, just... And most people are really happy to take 20 minutes out to chat with someone who has shown passion and initiative and interest. So that would be my suggestion.
Other panel members?
So just following on my first volunteer experience, and what actually led me into employment in the HR industry was volunteering for the Australian Human Resources Institute. And from there, I was actually selected to be part of their mentoring program. So I was a mentee and paired up with a very experienced HR journalist. So I spent a year catching up with her, going to networking events, meeting other people in the industry. So I think it's really important to try and just, you know, again, connect with people on LinkedIn, ask them how they got into their, what they're doing now. A lot of the time it is by word of mouth. So even networking with your current peers, your current colleagues, you never know where it's going to lead. And if you never ask, you'll never know. So don't be afraid to go up to someone, even lecturers, and say, you know, how did you end up in this position? Because people are very happy, and I think we could all easily say today we've taken an hour out to come and speak to you guys. So people that have gone through the same experience always want to give back. So again, I have messaged people on LinkedIn asking them how they ended up in the position that they are at the moment. And I find that now people are doing the same thing to me. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you guys want to network further. But yeah, I think you're doing everything at the right time now by coming to these sessions, by hearing experiences from different people. So I believe that if you persist and work hard, you'll hopefully end up in the position that you'd like to be.
So these guys have hit the nail on the head, and just quickly to give you that bit more confidence to go out and ask people, people love talking about themselves. They always, dare I say it, that's why we're here today. People want to share their stories, and if it means you spend $3.50 on a coffee or bring a keep cup, make it $3, get a bit of a discount, that's $3 very, very well spent. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. People love to speak.
Now this is unfortunately going to probably be the last scripted question, because I'm looking at the time and I know people have classes to get to. So yes, you.
My question is probably for Claudia. I think feel free to, I don't, since like there's so many opportunities at the university, sometimes it can get really overwhelming. And right right now I find myself that I'm involved in so many things. When I send out my resume to an employer, at what point will it start to reflect confusion on my point?
So I'll say what the question is, just so that everyone out the back can hear as well. So we've got a question from a student who's doing lots and lots of things, and he's a bit concerned to know when will his CV start to look as though he's a bit confused and not really full of direction in how he's going. So he's asking our local HR consultant for advice.
Okay, so in terms of CV, anything over 2 pages, I usually won't read because I don't have time. So I guess in a nutshell, the best thing to do is the job that you're applying for. Look at the job ad, look at the key selection criteria and almost prioritise and go, okay, what skills did I learn from that volunteer experience or being part of that committee or being a team captain that I think the employer would be the most interested in? And a CV is there again to build a picture and a background picture of what you're like as a person, and a CV is ultimately there in order for you to receive a phone call from HR to get an interview. So you almost just need enough on there to have the recruitment person engaged and in order to go into the interview. Just because you don't put something down in your CV does not mean that you can't talk about it over the phone or in an interview. And again, LinkedIn's always a great thing. So on my CV, I don't have listed that I worked at Target for 3 years because that's currently not, I guess, related to the work that I'm doing now, but it's still on my LinkedIn account. So yeah, I think that when going for a job, say you've got 5 volunteer experience or 6 volunteer experiences and you're going to knock over to a 3rd page, think, okay, which ones are the most important, and that I think that will mostly engage the employer, and then I guess hope that you receive a phone call and then you can speak more about your experiences. So also, I guess touching on that, each experience that you've got, try and pull something different. So say, for example, you had 2 jobs in retail, but one job may have been more of a supervisory role. Another job may be you've got skills like prioritising, being diligent, time management, things like that. So change up your CV, try and make it interesting, try and keep it under 2 pages. But it's really there just so the employer has a background picture of you. So again, read the position description carefully and try and think, what do I really want to show the employer? Again, that what I'm really passionate about and what message you want to bring across to them.
Great advice. So Phil, did you want to say something? Or?
Oh, I didn't.
That's right.
I could just add one little tip to what Claudia said as well, because I'm in a similar boat to yourself, and what I do when I'm writing a resume, I'll just put relevant work experience, as though to give them an indicator that there's more behind this.
Now, I am going to need to ask you to join me soon, but I wanted these people here just to name one skill that you didn't have when you ended up your Bachelor of Science. And it might have been something you developed later, that you wish you'd taken the opportunity to get while you were studying science. So one skill that you came out of your BSc without, that you wish you had taken steps to get and develop while you were in your BSc. Who's ready to answer first? Okay, Claudia.
Probably I'd say actually public speaking. I used to hate getting in front of audiences. I still do, I still get nervous, but
Overcome it, hasn't she?
slowly. Yeah, I was very nervous, quite introverted, so I found that I wish that during my Bachelor of Science I was probably putting myself out there more and, you know, speaking to people and asking those questions. When I got to work it was sort of forced, so yeah, and probably another one, I make sure you guys take out time to read different types of articles, read different types of reports. You know, don't just stick to journal articles in your area of interest. Try and read things outside that as well, because again, if you've already got exposure to it before going into the workplace, like I'd never read an annual report before I got to work, and I went, oh, okay, I don't understand what's going on. So yeah, try and familiarise yourself with as many different types of texts and reports as you can as well.
Thank you. After George, and then we'll sit back along the
Simply empathy. Just be really interested in what other people are talking about. And even if you're not interested, pretend you're interested. It's a great way to get on with people, and you can't get a good job if you don't get on with people and you can communicate. So empathy for me.
Possibly professionalism. I can be a little bit of a left-of-centre character, and I can look back and see ways I could have shown a greater level of professionalism when I'm conversing with academic staff or some of my co-students. And I would have liked to experience being a little bit more professional and just getting used to that feeling of being professional before I entered the workplace. It's all good, Jenny.
I wish I'd actually taken one of your classes, because mine's probably writing in a non-scientific way. I'm really good at, one sentence, one thought, explaining something technical, not so great at like persuasive arguments or kind of marketing type material and bits and pieces. So it would have been great if I'd had a bit more experience in that.
Sorry for the repetition, but for me it's also communication skills, because when I went through the Bachelor of Science here, there was absolutely no opportunity to develop those skills. The first time I ever spoke in front of a group was as an honours student giving a seminar. I really didn't get a lot of writing practice, and I guess that's, we've talked about passion, and Michelle knows me very well and knows that I have an absolutely deep ongoing passion for trying to equip you guys with the skills that we all know you need and that I didn't get the chance to develop. I often say if I get run over by a bus tomorrow, I feel like I've spent my life well, because there's been so many cohorts of students who've come through our science communication subjects now who've learned how to communicate better. So however you do it, whether it's coming to me, whether it's going to George, whether it's going to Toastmasters, whatever it takes, do not think you can get away with not being an incredibly good writer and speaker, because regardless of what career you want, you just can't. It's number one.
And in different words, each of these people have said what they would recommend in terms of feeling as though they might have missed it themselves is that relationship building, because of course communication is about that. It is about making the link between you and the people you're trying to communicate with. And in fact, George, in what he was talking about with the empathy, Phil, in what he was talking about with professionalism and the communication, and all of the things that the panel have been saying, it's about thinking about yourself in relationship with other people, whether it be in the workplace or wherever. And of course, that's something that you can do every day as students with the people that are sitting right next to you right now, as well as the colleagues that you work with in class, as well as the academic staff that you interact with as well. So a very important additional layer, and in fact a C within which all of your science skills are being developed. Can I ask you to join me in saying an immense thank you to these 5 experts that are a step further down the track than me. Learnt lots, because I always do when I hear our graduates and our current students talk about what they're doing. So can I also say a really big thank you to Casey and to Eduardo and to Carl for their role in finding the people, organising the session and making sure that you were here. So thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and a big thank you to all of these people too. And now you're free to go. That was one of the reasons that I said at the end of one of the series of events that we could have had a panel of people and also the things that you are really so if you as I said, we pushed that panel down so
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Sure. I've got a little gift for you. I'm just saying thank you for giving up your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Pleasure. Are you close locally still? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're around the offices.
Oh, you're still there? Okay, great.
And then we do 1 day a week out of the
yeah. Just finished my bachelor. Oh, thanks. And I really appreciate the thing with it. It really was. Yeah, no, you're all in such fantastic points and you spoke so well. I don't know, we couldn't get better if we'd have actually prepped you all. So, no, it was really lovely. You all harmonised really well and backed each other really well, so it came out very nicely. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you so much.
Just to say thank you. For giving up your time. So I hope the rest of your week goes well.
Yeah, it'd be great. Feel free to give me a call. I love to talk to you. I was one of those students that's enjoying it.
We've all been there. I mean, when we started the mentoring program, I actually piloted it last year, and seeing what the students have put into their biography and their application, I was thinking, these are end of bachelor or master students, they're going to have a real sense of where they're going, forgetting of course that I didn't have that when I was doing my undergraduate degree, and so it's really just reaffirms me that there is such a need for people like yourself to come along and give the benefits of your experience, so I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I've always found it speaking to people from different industries is always helped along the way. Because probably another 5-10 years I think what you do.
Well, that's it.
Never know who's speaking and what you're doing.
No, and we talk about people potentially having, I think it's next 6 careers over their lifetime, which is terrifying because I'm clearly about time for a change, but otherwise I've got a lot to fit into it. No, it's...
I wouldn't be surprised if I started working at university.
As someone who started working at university because I didn't find a graduate job straight away and have worked at universities for 10 years now, it does happen. But it's a great employer as well.
I love to be career with students and even in school, like helping students find out what they want to do. I was one of those students. I probably should have gone to read some of these.
I certainly have. Yeah. And there are a lot of things that back home that didn't live on campus.
Subject of science
yes. It's been going for a few years now, but it's fairly new.
I was in my second year in 2015, so I wonder if I just missed the boat, because I would have loved to take a subject like that as part of it. It's great. You can take it as a grad, and
and the projects that we do through science communication are really fascinating. There's a lot of quite a general bent to it, so there's that real input from a different sort of student body than
even now, I still love physiology. I like my psychology and all that stuff. So you never lose it. Yeah, you never lose it, and it's never a waste. No degree is a waste of time. I think all those students that I go, I've just done a very good job. They're doing things because I've had stable jobs. They're not looking out, which sometimes, big firms like Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they've got consulting different areas. Yeah, it's not just because you've got science degree means you have to be a scientist. You can be, but it also also, there's
the
a lot of
message that we
lawyers
try
who
to
end
get
up
out
going
a lot,
work.
but I don't think necessarily students really hear it. When you think of it, it's kind of like I'm doing my Bible study in chemistry or whatever. But students really do, and employers really do understand it. One of our mentors is from the Victorian Police, and he's in the cybercrime area. He says he pretty much exclusively recruits science men, and not just for him, but generally because of the analytical mind, the critical thinking. So
a lot of things in workplace can be taught. As long as you got the foundation skills. All right, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for answering the call.
No worries. Thank you.
To be honest, I see, I can't see it's really nothing that's the hit. So when you do the masters, then it's depending on the stream you're doing. It's very good. Actually, you are very accreditation. Go out and then even then, once you've got a little bit to go to school, like we'll be doing a 2 or 3 year graduate programs with one of the engineering school. So that's one of the things, so there's still enough graduate program on top of the chocolate and that's pretty much it. But I think absolutely another pathway you want to pursue. So if you're passionate about something is working in the field of related technology, it's not necessarily, but certainly I've got friends who are currently
still looking for something that actually gets them beneficial. You don't have to solve that long. So I'm only throwing that out to say you're young, you might change, and you've got time to change. It's not just because you're locked in now doesn't mean it's the end of the world. People's lives go in multiple directions as they grow older. No, you can't. Good, no problems.